Okay, so now let's talk about the Knowles neckties exercise. All right, so here we have this student, and this one's really awesome. I love this, and a couple points about this that I think are really great. Obviously, the really cool thing about here is the use of this effect for this tie reveal, which I think is really sweet. And I checked out the way that this person built that, and he used a kind of combination of a bulge effect and a mask. And we'll definitely go over that, okay? But I also did want to talk about just the animation in general, which I think is really nice. And a slight way that I think that we could take some of these timings and improve this and make it a little bit more like, just a little bit, make the flow just a little bit better, or at least in my opinion, you know? Okay, and it's really easy to do this once that everything's been animated into these pre-comps. It makes it a lot easier to slide these things around. And I want to show you how easy this is, okay? So this starts to build on, right? And when it's about here, this looks like maybe the banner's coming on a tad early to me. I don't know. So I might take the banner and wait. I guess that's probably pretty good. It's like the animation's almost done and it's starting to happen. Maybe I'll pull it back a couple of frames, right? And then here, now when this opens, I really feel like, so here's my Knowles neckties. This is the type. And I really feel like this can be happening a little bit sooner. So as soon as this starts to open, I would have that kind of happening. Because of the way you built this, the letters, they're kind of scaling from their own center. So it kind of matches this animation of the thing pulling up, the banner, which I think is really cool, by the way that pulls up. So let's see what that looks like, just that, right? And let me push this back just so we don't have to deal with that, right? See how that flows just a little bit better there? Yep. So, okay, so those are now, I think, just in a slightly better position, right? So there's a little less kind of wasted time. So the banner just feels like one action now, right? And now let's figure out the best place to pull this in, the shirt. So obviously, we want to kind of play off this sort of getting bigger thing here because the shirt's going to kind of pop up. So let's wait till this is almost done, and then let's see. Let's slide this. Okay, and the shirt is starting here. And it looks like it's actually starting from behind the banner. So I guess the way that I have to do this is wait now until this is actually really on. So maybe like, let's see, when's the first frame that's really up? Maybe about there. Okay, so that could be, yep, the next frame I could start my shirt. So let's see what that looks like. Yeah, I think that was cool. And maybe actually the shirt could wait because it's sort of interrupting the Knowles neckties. So maybe it can come in a little bit later. You know, and it's more like 1, 2, 3 now. It's like it's a little bit easier to read. It's a little easier to see all the aspects of it. So, you know, depending on how much time you have in the sequence, obviously this would change this. But because I do really love this shirt pop up and roll down as an ending, I think it's nice to emphasize that and put a little bit more time right there. Okay, let's talk about that little effect here. So let me jump into the shirt and tie. And this is one of those effects that looks really cool, but isn't actually that complicated, all right? So I think any of you, you know, it's just the good idea to do it this way, okay? So here's tie 3, and he's put a bulge effect on here, or he or she, I forget. And so that effect is distort and bulge right there. And what that's doing is it's just creating this little bulge here and kind of animating the bulge center, okay, to move down. And that's really the sweet part. And that's coinciding with this mask, which you can kind of see here. If I made it like this, I think you'll be able to see it a little bit better, right? Maybe, right? So there's the mask. That's the green thing. And that's, you know, masking the tie off. And it's rolling down and the bulge is kind of happening at the same time, right? It's really sweet. I think you could have also, to use like a different tie, you could have also used a different effect, a different distort effect, which is like, where is it? Page turn, you know, which often is like, you know, pretty cheesy for like a page turn animation, like in a, you know, an old textbook or kind of a thing. But in this case, you can actually kind of have the tie kind of, you know, fold. Let's see, how do I do this? The fold radius. I can sort of animate. I think I would just animate I'd animate the Y position of this fold to have it kind of like turn down like that. And you could always like kind of tighten up that radius there too. So you could have probably used that. And there's probably a bunch of like other distortion effects you could have used, but I thought the bulge one really worked perfectly and looked great. So good job. Let's jump on to the next one. Okay, here we are, and this is another student's work, and this is another really great example. The thing about this one, I think, is is that like all the animation's excellent, but the timings are a little bit slow, especially for the Knowles neckties. The way that pops up is just really, it's just like pretty slow. And I kind of wanted to show this really cool trick of how you can change timings fairly easily, right? So if I jump into this Knowles neckties and we select all and then press U, we could see all of these layers here, right? And let's see what's happening. Is that it comes up and it overshoots and it lands. And that's perfect, right? But if we actually look at the timings here, we'll see that this is 10, 20, so that's like 19 frames on the move up. And then 10, 1, 2, 3, so it's like 13 frames on the move down. So that in total is, let's see, I'm not great at math, 1, 2, 3. It's over a whole second just for each individual letter to move up, which is really slow. It's like 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000. And the other reason why it seems slow is because it's not moving very far. It's just kind of moving from down here to up here over a whole second. So it seems very slow, okay? So there's a couple things that we could do to alter this. And, you know, one of the first ones is you could just take all the second and third keyframes of the sequence, and I'm just kind of shifting and selecting them all, making sure that I don't select any of these. And now if I go back to my first one, I feel like the timings here should be much quicker, more like 8 frames on the way up. So I'd move like page down 10 and then page up 2 to get to 8. And I'm going to take all these keyframes which are selected and just move those here so that that first one clicks, right? And then I'll probably, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 frames or something. And I'm going to now take all the third keyframes and select all those. Careful not to select any of these other ones, which you kind of have to do in groups like this. And now I'm going to kind of move this up, right? And so now the animation's a lot faster. Let's see what that looks like. Right? And it's not like hella fast. It's just more like sort of normal, I feel like. It's just not really slow. So if we look at that in here now obviously the timings too of like when this could start coming in, I think it could start to come in earlier, right? So I would push this whole pre-comp up until about here, maybe, right? Let's see what that looks like. So it's like, burn. Okay, yeah, I could deal with that. And also, we could probably trim this so that it just starts right there. It looks like I'm a few frames off, actually, because it's starting to pop up before the banner comes on. You can kind of see there. So move this back a couple more frames. Perfect. And now the other strange thing I noticed about this is that this has been masked, which is great. But I feel like, oops, and for some reason I can't see my layer handles, so I'm going to go up to View Options and Layer Controls, right? And now I can see the edge of this. And here, let me press M to reveal my mask, and I'm going to just put on a darker mask, or like a fuchsia mask or something so we really see it here. Okay, so this mask is great because it's cutting it at the bottom, kind of, although it looks like it's a few pixels off. But also because of the bounce up here, like here, you can see that like the S bounces up above the banner. So what I kind of want to do, because I'm so OCD, is kind of change this mask so that it fits a little bit better. So I'm going to click on here and I'm going to move these up so that they're right. So this is like right at that bottom of the banner here, so there's no overlap. And then move this top down also so that it cuts that there, okay? And so I just think that would be like a little bit easier, to see when it comes up. And it would kind of trim it and keep it contained within there. So yeah, so I think that's a little bit more fun. And you could probably also, right now there's like a variable timing on this. As you can see, there's like 1, 2, 3 frames before the next one comes in at the top. And then as it goes further, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames. And timings are a little bit variable in here. And I might also just be tempted to like take all these and overlap them a little bit less, maybe just like 1 frame so that the whole thing could happen a little bit quicker, right? So yeah, so we'd have to trim a bunch of these layers and do all that. I'm not going to do that now because that'd be boring to watch, but that's probably what I would do. And I also want to say that like I really like the design on this, but I think that the gradient being so dark on top here and then this dark green that you've got makes the logo doesn't really stand out too well here. It's actually a little bit hard to read, which I think probably in real life, if you did that for your client, they'd be like a little bit bummed about that because it's hard to read. The design on this overall is great, and I think it's really good. I want to talk about this one little thing here, okay? Which is, actually, no, it's the shirt and tie, right? So when the tie comes down, and I gotta say, like, I think this is really cool that you used masks to reveal, like, the shirt and tie. I think it's a slightly odd move just because, I mean, it's cool that they're both working diagonally toward their own center. I just don't think of this as resembling in any way like the way a shirt would move in real life to me. And I try to base some of my animation ideas on more naturalistic things. But again, this is totally fine. That's just me. But let's talk a little bit about this tie, okay? Because I think it's really close, and I see the animation that we're trying to do here, which is like a bounce down with an overshoot. But I think it's got a couple issues, and it kind of just make it a little less clear, so I want to talk about those. For one, I'm going to solo my tie for 1 second. Let's see where the student put the anchor point, which is here. Which, you know, I feel like the anchor point from a tie should be at the top. If it's going to do this kind of drop-down move especially. So so here, look at the animation with it there. I'm going to hit B and then N, right? So there's the animation now. And it's also really slow, okay? And let me make this faster. I'm going to show you a different way to make things faster now. We haven't talked about this. This is really cool. So just say I want to keep the ratio of these keyframe timings the same, but I want to shorten the overall sequence of keyframes, right? Just say I want it to be 10 frames for this whole thing, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 15 frames. I could select all these, and now I'm going to Option and click and drag with the end keyframe here. And you see that? I can kind of smush it in or widen it out, and it keeps the ratio of keyframes the same, okay? Then I'm going to hit Shift and snap this right to the keyframe there. Now, the only problem with this, and this is a great trick, and we'll talk about this more. The only problem with this is sometimes, and it's happening right now, is that this can deposit your keyframes in between the frames, okay? So look at that. We can't actually, there's no frame here for this keyframe, so what I'd have to do is, it looks like it's, you know, I'm zoomed in enough here that this is one big keyframe here, so it's within that keyframe, so I would snap this back to my beginning there, all right? So just careful with that, because it could put your keyframes a little bit funky. So now let's look at this animation here, now that it's like 10 frames. Okay, so it's faster, it's happening faster, it's a little more dynamic, but still, something a little bit weird about it, I think, which is that the anchor point is still here. So I'm going to choose my pan behind tool, or Y, and I just take this real quick and snap this up to the top. And now let's see the difference there, right? So it kind of comes out of its own, it emerges from its own top. I don't know, I just think that that's like a more accurate way for a tie to move myself, okay? And while we're talking about easing, I might as well do this too. If I select all my keyframes and press F9, okay? And then I go into my value graph, my graph editor rather, by pressing this button, right? Now we'll see, we're actually in the value graph now, not the speed graph, which is kind of different. But in this case, because it's just one property, the scale, I think this will be pretty easy to see. And all we would need to do is just really, you know, put some more snap into this animation and also have it hold here at the overshoot. This is what's really important, is that it kind of holds here for a beat, okay? So what I would do is kind of probably pull this out and pull this out so that this pause is a little bit longer, right? If you don't know what I'm doing, don't sweat it. We will get to this. And I pull this out so it eases in a little bit more at the end. And I'd pull this a bunch actually at the start so it's got some really good snap to it. And then like it would look like this. Boing, right? It's just like a little bit more fun, a little bit more comical, if that's what you were going for, which is like a comical bounce on, right? Okay, for this final Nol's Neckties project, I noticed right away when I opened this that there were like 2 compositions going on in here, and so I kind of was like, what's happening there? And so what I see is that this person took their Nol's Neckties, you know, all of this, and they pulled it into another composition, which is a different kind of pre-comping. And what they did is, I'm guessing because their animation, they felt it was too slow in the original one, what they did is they kind of put this time remap thing on here. We haven't talked about time remapping at all, but it's actually really cool and useful. And what it allows you to do is for a pre-comp or a sequence, or for any shot that's got movement in it, just say like a QuickTime movie, it will allow you to set a keyframe for the first frame and set a keyframe for the last frame of that video or layer. And then if you move those keyframes in, it'll kind of make everything happen faster. And if you move those keyframes out, it'll make everything happen slower. So what I see here is that this student, you know, their animation is somehow accidentally got to be really slow. And they kind of realized that too. And then they pulled it into this comp and then sped it up with this time remap. And, you know, that's a really clever way of trying to work this out. I think, you know, just because I'm trying to teach you guys the basics, what I want to do is just show you how you could have gone in and adjusted the timings without doing this time remap thing and just made it all kind of faster, right? So, if we look in our main comp here, we can see that, like, for example, the background, it's pretty slow. It takes, like all the animation's awesome and looks really cool, but it takes, almost 3 seconds for it to get on screen, or over 3 seconds, and that's just way too slow. So, if the whole thing's supposed to be like 3 seconds in total plus a second to hang at the end with no change, then 3 seconds just for the background's too slow. So if we look at the background stripes and we select all and press U, we can see all these timings. And what we could do is just do what I was doing before and take all of these and just squeeze it down by option and grabbing. Okay, so if you take all of these keyframes and select them all, make sure you got them all, and then, try to figure out how long you want it to take. Just say maybe you want this to take 1 second here. What I could do is option and grab the outermost keyframes, or one of the outermost keyframes. These two look like they're at the same spot. If I move those in, I'll shrink everything down. Now, I will say I'm going to undo that. If I try to grab this option and grab it from like here, I'll just move all the keyframes and it won't do that thing. You have to grab from the outermost keyframe and drag in. You could also drag from the beginning keyframes to drag that way too, okay? So just say you wanted this whole thing to happen quicker, you could kind of like just drag this in like that. And then it would all just happen quicker, right? And you wouldn't need to like time remap the whole thing. So that's definitely like a little bit of an easier way to go, I think, because time remapping, it's very hard to edit things within that time remapped system. Once you started applying that, it can get to be a bit of a pain in the butt. Believe me, I've done it. I've done that a million times. So this option drag thing is a really good way to go. I'm going to undo this for a second. I also just, like, while I have this open, kind of want to point out, and this is another really common, very normal thing for students to do, is accidentally put like way too many keyframes into a layer, okay? Now, I don't really know what's going on here, but it looks like everything is just basically starting at 0 and then scaling up. So I don't quite understand why there's so many keyframes in here. So let's look at this. Let's look at this with like, let's just look at this one, and I'm going to solo this. And let's see what's happening here. So it's starting here. And I think if I unsolo this, I think this student wanted this to start with a box, which I think is really super cool. So that's why that's like that. So I get that. And then let's see if I solo this again. So it goes from this, okay, which is 100 on the X and 21 on the Y. And then it goes up to 100 on the X and 60 on the Y. And then it goes all the way up to 100 on the Y. So yeah, so this middle keyframe, these are totally unnecessary. You don't need to have it go from 20 to 60 then 100, you just have it go from 20 to 100, okay? And that's kind of what I suspected here. And now let's look at like this. What's this? So this one's going from 0, and then over 3 frames, it's getting to be like this, which, actually, now that I look at this, it's animating on both the X and the Y at the same time, which is probably not that great of an idea, because the whole thing is getting smaller rather than it just getting like longer and shorter, right? So then that happens, then it goes up to here, 60 again, and then to 100 again. Yeah, so again, I don't think we need either of these 2 keyframes. And let's just make sure at the beginning that this is set to 100 on the X and 0 on the Y, just so this can get bigger like that and not be like getting wider and taller at the same time, right? So what I would probably do is just go through all of these and just pull out all of these extra keyframes. Like, I'm not sure. Like down here, for example, what are these doing? I don't know what these are doing at all. Oh, because I have this soloed, that's why. So let's see. So this is this one, and if I solo this, it's going like that. I don't know. Maybe that's part of the animation, or... Yeah, I'm not sure why that's doing that. That to me looks like also it's probably a mistake. So I would probably get back into the background stripes, unsolo that just to make sure, but... Yeah, it doesn't look like this necessarily wants to get smaller there at the end. I think it's a mistake. So if I go back to my shirt and tie, I'm sorry, my background stripes rather, I think I'm just gonna delete both of these sets here. And oops, that's no good. So let's see. So when it reaches here, yeah, I don't know why that's doing that. I'm gonna delete these, and then I would probably just take this and put this back to 100. I think that's probably what this person wanted. A little confused here, but I see I'm changing the timing, so I'm doing something wrong. This isn't what they want somehow. I see, because they want kind of more of a staggered on for those. Well, whatever. I think there's just too many keyframes in here, and let's see, what is what is going on with all these? So this one, let's just look at this animation by itself. Oh, I see. This is like we're trying to adjust the timings a little. Again, like once we get into easing and I actually teach that, I think that'll make total more sense to you, and you won't have to try to do this using linear keyframes, which is just really hard. It's hard to ever get this like to look too even. Like the student's done a pretty good job trying to even it out, but that's just a really tough thing to do. And I would definitely also make sure that you remember at the beginning to, you know, keep the X at 100% if all you want is a Y animation, right? Otherwise you put a little error in there too. Cool, so I think these are all really great examples, and I think this one's really fun. You know, I think the one other thing that I want to talk about, oh, I've got all the background shied off except for that one layer. I wanted to talk about this tie a little bit in the way this swings, because this is like a really cool thing what the student's going for here, which is this kind of like a pendulum animation where it gets like a little bit smaller each time. I didn't actually think that this worked, this animation, for a couple reasons. Mostly because it's really long. 1, 2, 3. Oh my goodness, there's like over a second between each of these things. So let's kind of redo this, and let's look at the way, the angles as well, because it's really important. And I don't think the student did it in a way that's as clear as possible. So I'm going to delete all those, okay? And I'm actually going to start with this being kind of to the side. Let's start with this at like 20, okay? And I'm going to move 10 frames. And it's very important in a pendulum situation. The main thing to remember is that the swing timings, it actually takes the same amount of time for it to swing back and forth, but the values of the swing should get smaller and smaller until it kind of reaches down to 0, right? So this is the way I would do this. If it's starting at -20, I'd move 10 frames and then go to like -15, okay? So it's diminishing a little bit, and move another 10 frames and then go to like 10. Okay, so it's going back and forth between positive and negative also, and go 10 more frames, move this to like -7, okay? And then go another 10 frames, and then move this to like 4, right? And then move another 10 frames and move this to like -2. I don't know if I'm doing this perfectly. And then finally we go to like 1, and then another 10 frames, then go back down to 0, okay? And without any, you know, eases or anything, let's check out what that looks like. You know? So it's kind of got like the right like action, sort of, but in a way like it's just looking a little bit stiff, right? So if I take all of those and I just put F9, just put some regular easy ease on there, right away it just is going to look a little bit better, okay? So that's the kind of thing that you could probably just use a regular ease for. If you really wanted to, you could get in here. This is actually really interesting because what we're doing is building what's known as a decay curve here, okay? And this is something that Joey goes over a lot in animation boot camp, so I don't need to step on that. But you can see that each of the peaks gets closer down to 0 at each moment as it goes, right? And you know what you probably could do is you could probably pull this out so that this takes a little bit longer getting started, and pull this out so it takes a little bit longer finishing, especially at the end. And maybe the one at the beginning isn't so good because it makes it look a little sudden. And maybe it should be moving just like really suddenly at the start. No. It's always a little bit tricky here. So, you know, I would, you know, if we pull this out more, no, that's no good. So I would say just put this, maybe even press F9 just to return it back to the generic ease, right? But that's how you would do that. You would make the timings of the swing the same, but the value gets smaller and smaller over time, all right? So I think that really wraps it up here on the animation oatmeal. I'm really in love with all the work that you guys are doing. I'm just really thrilled by it and all the inventiveness and the fun that you're having. And I wish I could talk about every project and praise them all, but there's not enough time. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.